Who should pay for the first date then?
My answer is, doesn't matter. It would be nice if the person who suggested the date pays, but I think we spend way too much time focusing on the first date and way too little time thinking about the next 14,625 days. It's like a couple who's obsessed with the wedding. Fine, you want a nice wedding, great. What about the marriage? Same thing with money. First date, okay, we can have that conversation, but aren't you more interested in how your partner thinks about money and talks about money? Are they a cheapskate? Are they generous? Are they abundant? Did they grow up the same or different than you? That is something we don't talk about. Meanwhile, we have 5 million YouTube videos on who's going to pay on the first date. We are missing the real point. The point of money in a relationship is not just about the first date. That's fun for clicks, but it's about, do we see money the same way? Do we connect? Are we going to be rowing in the same direction, or are you going to be doing that and I'm doing this, and we can never get aligned?
You can only make a first impression once, right? And if you are a guy, this is just how I feel anyway. If I go on a first date with a woman, and we have a wonderful date, it's a nice restaurant, and then it gets to the end of the day, and then I turn to her and say, "Shall we split the bill?" I couldn't even say it with a straight face, frankly. I definitely couldn't ask her to pay.
Yeah.
I just could never. And I think if you anonymously polled 10 of my female friends and said, how would you feel if on the first date the guy asked you to pay?
Mm-hmm.
I think privately they would say, that's a bit of a turnoff, that's a red flag, that's an ick.
I think probably that's true. And again, goes to the power of socialization, right? Like, culture is very difficult to change. We got to admit that. We got to acknowledge that. And when I was dating, I paid for dates. So I don't have a problem with it. I like to be generous. I think that when you are in a relationship, you like to know that your partner is generous too. Now, generous comes in lots of ways. It could be paying for dates. It could be planning a trip. It could be being thoughtful and, buying extra toothpaste because we're running low. There's so many different ways to be generous. But generosity for me would be a value. Paying for a date, sure, I paid for dates. I'm happy to. I like to do it. But generosity to me is way more important to talk about that in a relationship versus the date itself.
Because chivalry, this idea that the man is to lead in that regard and to, open the door and open the car door and pull out the chair.
Yeah, but think about it. I agree with all that stuff. I support it. But think about what message that sends when you tell men you're supposed to be chivalrous, but there's no real context, no real teaching around it. And let's say you have a 26-year-old guy now who's earning less than his girlfriend. So he wants to be chivalrous, but for him, he's like, well, look at our bank accounts. And so what I want to emphasize to people is you can be chivalrous, you could be generous. Money is just a small part of that. Yeah. Let's not over-fixate on who's paying for tapas, okay? And let's actually think about the important things. When it comes to money, we are so obsessed with $3 questions. People are obsessing over, should I buy this coffee? Can I afford this appetizer? On and on and on about $3 questions. We totally neglect the $30,000 questions or the $300,000 questions. Is this person financially aligned with me? How do I even find out? Am I investing 5 to 10% of take-home pay every month? Are we doing it together? Do we talk about money regularly and proactively and positively? Those things matter, and they're actually worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. These $3 questions, including who's paying for appetizers or should I buy a latte, irrelevant. In fact, get the big answers in life right, and you can buy all the appetizers you ever want.
What are the financial red flags in a relationship then?
Number one is they don't want to talk about money. If you don't want to talk about money, red flag, the biggest red flag of all. Because we could differ on how we see money. We can even have different values for a few things. But if your partner simply will not talk about money, you have a huge problem.
Why?
If you can't talk about money, then you can't even understand where they're coming from, and they are not curious about what you want. So how are you ever going to get on the same page? Think about this. A lot of people think we need to have the conversation about money. As if it's one conversation. Would you have the conversation about raising kids? No. You'll have thousands in your life. That's the way it should be. Money is very much like parenting. Not like Should we play pickleball or tennis today? Irrelevant. So we want to have lots of conversations about money. And that means we need to, first of all, be willing to talk about it. And then we need to find a way to have fun doing it.
Why don't we? And who doesn't? Is it men? Is it women that don't do it more? Or who's not talking about money and why aren't they talking about it?
It's not about gender. It has nothing to do with gender in terms of who does or doesn't talk about money. There are avoiders. That's one of 4 categories, money types that I've identified. Avoiders hate talking about money. And they will use a series of conscious and unconscious techniques to avoid talking about money. They'll say things like, why do you always have to talk about money? Can't we just have a nice night out? Or, you're so much better at this, you just handle it. You're just so much savvier at this stuff. That's an avoider.
Do they know their own financial situation?
No.
So they don't know their own financial situation and they don't want to talk about it?
Correct. And by the way, we all have something like this. It could be our fitness. It could be our relationship with our parents. There's something in our life that we know we should deep down, but we avoid it.
Yeah.
And there's no immediate consequence. Like if I don't call my college friend, it's fine. I could probably call him tomorrow, and you can go on and on and on like that until one day you can't. Same thing with our fitness. It's very easy to procrastinate on fitness or money because it's not like your house is being taken away or even your cable's being shut off. It'll probably be fine until one day you hit this brick wall and it's not.
So that's the avoider. That's the first money type.
Yep. Next up, optimizer. I have a soft spot because I am an optimizer. Optimizers, we love to live in the spreadsheet. It's like, let me sit and calculate this, and what if I run a compound interest calculation, a Monte Carlo calculation, and what if we do this but not that? I love calculating everything. And left alone, I would sit there and do that for the rest of my life, okay? The problem is you can take it a little too far. Now, I don't think I've taken it too far. I think I'm perfect on my spreadsheets, but my wife has taught me enough's enough. We've won that part of life. Let's focus on another part, connection and fun and experience.
Are these people often thought of as boring?
Yes, they are deep down, they are boring. I was boring when I was sitting there thinking money is only about numbers. It's not. Money is about adventure and possibility and generosity. And you will often find optimizers, I'll give them a challenge. I'll give them a $100 challenge. Also, you have to take $100 in the next week and spend it on yourself. They cannot do it. They will spend it on their dog. They'll spend it on their kid. They'll spend it on their partner, but they will not do it for themselves. And I go, why didn't you do it? They go, Ramit, do you know that if you put $100 in the S&P 500 and you compound that for the next 45 years, it'll turn into this much? I go, I don't give a shit. Spend the money. Because money is not simply meant to be hoarded, right? It's meant to create a rich life. And when you have optimizers, the thing is they can get you to a very good place. They will probably have your account set up, dialed in. They'll be investing. Great. They're going to be very proud. Look at the compound interest returns. All that is fantastic, but it can be taken too far.
These are the people that die and then you figure out that they had like $9 million in some saving account.
What a waste.
They never tasted the caviar, but they've got...
Yeah, like people send these newspaper articles around like, oh, local librarian discovered to have $9 million. And I go, what a tragedy. What a tragedy to live a smaller life than you have to. I want you to save, I want you to invest, but I also want you to try a nice meal.